me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome back to the podcast. Busy podcast day. I did not realize we were going to put out so much content, so much great, excellent content, I should say. If you are bored this weekend, there is no better way to spend it than with me as we take you all throughout the pop culture and sporting world. We knocked out the best players of the decade. That podcast went out last night, Thursday night. Friday morning, we have the sports grab bag, a movie review, and of course, we got to do the MLB preview. Doing the NL Central today, one of the more fun divisions to talk about, having some of the best rivalries in the sport. I think that if you talked about the rivalries in this division, it's in the same conversation to me as the AL East. And honestly, the NL West have had some very good competitive years. But I think the NL Central this year is one of the, if not the most competitive division. We did the NL East on Monday. That podcast is up on the podcast page, so you want to go check that one out. But the NL Central, and disclaimer, when we read off the win over-unders, because Major League Baseball has suspended the season for an undisclosed amount of time, the over-unders are what it would be if there was a 162-game season. All of these things kind of change now. I think that it's going to be a real big shake, especially, and we talked about this on the Grab Bag episode, with just sporting news. Side note, Boston sports recently, tough look. Brady, now Chris Sale with the Tommy John surgery, not a good look for Boston sports. For this division, the winner of this division, very slim margin between the favorite and everybody else. The favorite in the division was the St. Louis Cardinals, which we're going to get to. We go through these in alphabetical order, but the division favorite was the Cardinals, followed closely by the Cubs at plus 260, and then the Reds and Brewers had the same odds to win the division at plus 275, and the Pittsburgh Pirates were in far last place at 6,000. So, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Chicago Cubs. Since winning the World Series in 2016, a team that we thought would be winning multiple titles by now is drowning. Now almost feels like they're making... It almost feels like the make or break season, I write, for the Cubs. In addition of adding David Ross as the new manager, he was on that 2016 World Series team. The roster's still chock full of talent, and they're set up for a championship run. Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant are still cornerstone players, and Yu Darvish looks like the type of guy who could be the starting pitcher for a winning team, a winning divisional team. Do I think that this team has enough firepower, has enough hitting to win a ton of games? They were at 85.5 games, set the over-under. I had the over. I thought that they were going to win closer to 87. This feels like a team that, like I said, make or break year. Theo Espin and the Chicago Cubs front office have made some bigger moves. I don't think Joe Madden was the problem. I don't think that he was the thing that was holding this entire roster back. I think that there is a case to be made that there's some players on this roster, without naming names and without watching all 116 or 162 games every single season of the Cubs. So I wouldn't ever claim to be the Cubs expert. I'm just a guy who thinks he knows a little bit more than the rest of you. I would say that the Cubs have some players, or have had some players in that locker room who didn't necessarily think that it was important to continue to try to turn this into a dynasty. I think that guys like Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, always have been the type of guys that want the next one, that smell the next one. But when you look at the difference between their winning their World Series in 2016, coming back from 3-1 against the Indians, when you compare that to what the Houston Astros have done. Now, granted, the Astros cheated, so it's hard to make that comparison. But if you take the cheating and try to put it aside, it's really hard to separate the two. But if you take the cheating and you put it aside, and you just look at the way that Springer and Altuve and Bregman and Correa have always seemed like they have that hunger still in their stomach, that one wasn't good enough, that they wanted another plate of championship pie. versus some of the players on that Cubs roster who seemed like they were fine by breaking the curse and continuing just to play the way they play. I compared the Cubs winning in 2016 to what the Boston Red Sox did in 2004. What you got to remember is when the Red Sox won in 2004, they were in it. They were in that conversation again in 2005 and 2006. In 2007, they win the next, or I should say, they win the next one in 2007, and they felt like the type of team that was going to win a ton of World Series as time went on. The thing is, the Cubs are missing that window. And I don't know. I don't think it was the manager. I don't think that was really the problem. And I think that they've moved off some of the players, but we can only hope that David Ross, a young manager, is the type of manager that can get this ship back on track. Maybe he can get back behind the steering wheel and really turn this franchise around, because I think that they have the talent to do it. Player to watch, Kyle Hendricks is a third guy in the rotation that might help shore up the pitching problem the Cubs have had in the past. Hendricks has gotten Greg Maddux comparisons in the past. If he can capitalize on the coolness under pressure, he could be the guy to help secure the Cubs win another championship. All right, moving on to Cincinnati Reds, a team that, similar to the Cubs, is a team that should, I think, be competing more year after year. They have the talent. I don't know what the problem is. I think in the past it's been pitching. I write, the Cubs have finished under 500 the past 5 seasons, which makes betting the over hard for me to do. I said I'm taking the over on 83.5. They were able to get Mike Mussetta this offseason to go along with future Hall of Famer Joey Votto. That said, they still have a ton of holes in the lineup, and that makes me very nervous. They have a good enough rotation with Luis Costello, Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer, Wade Miley, and Anthony DiScalafo, I think. It's hard to pronounce some of these names. Look, similar to the Reds, or similar to the Cubs, the Reds are in a situation this year where it's make or break. You got a guy like Joey Votto, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best players of the last decade at his position. If you can't make him a champion, you need to send him on his way. I get it. The Reds have the guy. They want to keep him for the entirety of his career. I get it. That makes sense. But at the same time, there is something to be said for helping your all-time great franchise player go try to win a ring. If that's something that Votto wants, and he hasn't ever publicly said it, he's never been the type of guy to say, trade me, get me on a franchise, put me on a franchise, put me in a roster that's going to compete for a title. Before the season was preemptively suspended, canceled, whatever you want to put on hiatus, however you want to say it, I thought that the Reds felt like a team that if something went wrong with the Cubs and something went wrong with the Cardinals, that they could be the team that wins it. And we should win the division, I should say. And all you need to do is get in the playoffs, and then anything can happen. They have a good enough pitching rotation. I love Trevor Bauer. Sonny Gray didn't work for the Yankees, but I'm always going to root for the guy, former Pinstripes. I think that they have a good enough rotation to make something happen. Now, do I think that they have a good enough rotation and good enough hitting to win? That's really what I think it matters, especially when you're playing the Cardinals and the Cubs all the time. The Cubs are going to, I think, be able to out-hit you, and I think the Cardinals are going to be able to pitch you. So you need to find a good middle ground and hope that those two teams beat each other up the entirety of the season and you come out on top. Player to watch, Luis Castillo is a hard-throwing right-hander who has the power and control to become one of the best pitchers in the division if he can put his mind to it, if everything works out for him. He has a good changeup, and if the Reds can string together some wins, he could be on a team that surprises some people around baseball. The Reds, I feel it could be a surprise team, the same way that I said that I thought that the Phillies and I thought that the Nationals could be surprise teams in the East. It's weird for me to say that the defending champions could be the surprise team, but I think that they could be the team that surprises some people and might win that division. Moving on to the Milwaukee Brewers, have the same odds to win the division as the Reds. On paper, the Brewers have a similar problem to aforementioned Los Angeles Angels. You can find all of the AL podcasts on the page if you want to go back and listen to some of my previews. We did some of those before the season was put on hiatus, so just with that information, go back and might listen to some of those. They have one of the best players in baseball. They don't have the pitching. Last season, the Brewers starter rotation had a 4.40 ERA. In addition, Josh LeBeau and Eric Lauer need some help right away. if they want to be worth their contracts. Baseball should make a rule where if you have Trout or Yelich, you automatically make the playoffs. This is my big way to save baseball. If you got a guy like Trout, generational talent, a guy like Christian Yelich, incredible smile. When we talk about top 5 players just on looks, Christian Yelich has to be on that list. Gorgeous man. Perfect baseball player. That's what people want to see. They want to see the smiling, toothy guy, and I think that he fits that well. You need to have at least 5 games series, year in and year out, with power lefty. I'm going to be disappointed. Here's the thing. I think that Christian Yelich is the best player in the National League right now. I think that Mookie Betts has a lot on his plate. I think that he's going to be a good player. I've told you before how much I love Acura and how I think that Bryce Harper, in the right situation, if he can have his head put on straight, I think that he could be an incredible player too. But Christian Yelich has been the man in Milwaukee. Power hitter. You love to see it. I want to see him in the playoffs. I want to see the Brewers knock on that door. Do I think they're going to do it this year the same way that I think that the Reds could be the team that might surprise some people? The Brewers are in that conversation too, as a surprise team in the division. If you're the Brewers, you're really hoping that the Cardinals fall off. You're really hoping that the Cubs don't figure it out, because I don't think you make the playoffs if you are the wild card. If you're the second or third team in this division, I don't think that you're going to be getting into the wild card. But if you can win the division, and you got Christian Yelich, who we haven't really seen a ton of in the playoffs, I want him to have a big playoff moment. I'm sick and tired of watching Jose Bautista's home run against the Texas Rangers. I'm not a Rangers fan. I'm not a Jose Altuve fan. Or I'm not a Jose Bautista fan. I'm just a fan of sports. So when I tell you that the most annoying shot is Bautista walking off on that home run, the Blue Jays didn't win the World Series that year. Toronto didn't do anything really in the playoffs. It wasn't like they had this incredible playoff run and they were like an out away from winning the World Series. So to watch that home run over and over and over again is driving me completely crazy. I want Christian Yelich to have an incredible playoff moment, and hopefully we can knock out that Jose Bautista shot. I think that an incredible home run, bat flip, mean mug, I think that that is the way that we get that out of the rotation. So, Christian Yelich, Milwaukee Brewers, I beg you, I implore you to win the division and to give Christian Yelich his playoff moment. That's all I want. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Pirates, they've made a lot of moves this offseason. The team moves in the front office and the manager. They replaced Clint Hurdle with Derek Shelton and brought in some other guys to help run the team. Cherington has been a guy who helped build the 2013 Red Sox championship team. The Pirates are moving in the right direction before they hit the wall in the second half of the season. So it's not out of the realm of possibility they could start to be good. I like the rotation a little bit more than others. I think that Josh Bell's second half struggles were overstated. The Pirates aren't going to win a ton of games this year, but they're going to be a playoff team before 2025. And really, if you're a Pirates fan, that's all you really want. If you are a Pirates fan, if you're an Orioles fan, if you're a Blue Jays fan, this is the season. A Tigers fan, this is the season that you might not tune into all the games. Maybe your regional network kind of takes a hit. Maybe the ratings for the games, the ticket sales aren't great, especially with this coronavirus thing. We don't know when the season is going to start. I cannot emphasize that enough. But maybe you don't tune into these games, because I don't think they're going to win a ton of them. Player to watch is Josh Bell, who went from mashing home runs to not being able to hit anything. I said that happens. He's a solid first baseman. The Pirates want to be good. He has to be good. But I think he'll have another good season. There won't be a ton of pressure on him as the Pirates continue to rebuild, but he'll be the type of player that you want when you're moving forward. All right, moving on to the best team in the division, the team that I have winning the division, plus 210. Their over-under at the time of really doing a lot of research was 87.5. I think that they're going to be a team that was going to win 90 games. Now, when the season comes back, we don't know how many games it's going to be, but I still have them winning the division. The Cardinals have everything you want as a contender. They have a good rotation, including Adam Wainwright, who's in his 15th season. Dakota Hudson is the ace of the rotation. The former bullpen man had the third most wins last year in the NL, and I like Jack Flaherty, what he brings to the rotation. They have MVP contender Paul Goldschmidt. I really like Dexter Fowler and Matt Carpenter. Dexter Fowler has kind of struggled in the past couple of years, I think this would be a really good bounce-back year for him. Matt Carpenter, another guy who was on that championship team earlier in the last decade. I think that he's going to be another piece that you want moving forward. Best case, the Cardinals bat, rejuvenate, and they can hit more home runs as a team. But the more likely case is the Cards win a ton of games by 1 or 2 runs, relying on their pitching staff. They have an incredible starting pitching staff. I like their bullpen. I want it to be a little bit better. I want everybody's bullpen to be a little bit better as the season goes forward. Hopefully that they can figure some things out. I think the Cards are going to win the division relatively easily. That said, it's going to be hard with the Cubs and the Brewers and the Reds all breathing down their neck. I don't think they're going to win the division by a ton of games, but I think that the games that they win in the division are going to be ones where we say, wow, the Cardinals are really stinking good. Player to watch is Tommy Edman, I should say. He's a do-everything utility player, and he's bread and butter with the Cardinals. Perfect guy. He uses the use of young blood is good for a team that has a little bit older players. His ability to run the bases and play multiple positions will be big for the Cardinals, especially when they get into the summer months and the injury bug kind of creeps around. Like I mentioned, Dexter Fowler, Matt Carpenter, Paul Goldschmidt. All guys on the little bit older side. I would not shy away from gambling on the over whenever the over-unders come out for baseball. I would not shy about betting the over. The summer months I talk about are going to be, August, September? It's going to be interesting to see what happens this baseball season. Monday, we're talking about the NL West, and that's going to do it for our baseball preview. I will continue to update you on the baseball season day in and day out because, again, we do a daily podcast. I wanted to put this one out for you. I want to put all this content out for you on Friday so that we could have an incredible weekend. The Alexander Haynes interview we put up on Thursday has gotten a lot of really good reviews. You're going to want to go check that out. Very informative. If you haven't listened to him before, if you haven't listened to coronavirus stuff before, I say this to you. You're missing out because we have been, and I don't want to toot my own horn, and I'm not one to say I told you so. And I don't want to with this pandemic occurring. I think that it's very important that we all remember to stay inside, remember to wash our hands, remember to social distance ourselves from people so we can stop the virus, so we can do our part to help kind of quell the epidemic, the pandemic that has swept across our nation. The quicker we can figure this out, the quicker we can get back to regular scheduled programming, more sports. And that's really what we're all looking for. Alexander has been on top of this. Hands down, hats off, on top of this. Everything he has said has come to fruition. Everything he has said has come to pass. I will say this, it has been a rocky road, but having him come on, and I know a lot of people aren't super excited when he comes on because it's not a ton of good news. It never seems to be good news, but I'll say this. I would rather know our diagnosis and what we can expect and what's going to come of it, then go and continue to fly blind. It's very important that we know what we are doing. It's very important that we are able to figure out where this virus is going to go, how it spreads, all that type of stuff. It's very important that we stay on top of that type of stuff. And Alexander is the guy for it. So tune into that podcast. Tune into all of our other content that we've put out. It's a very full Friday, very full day of content. So if you check out some of them this weekend, if you check out some of them next week, I think they're all going to be pretty evergreen for you. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for continuing to stick with us. 2000s, we break down the best players of the 2000s, same way that we did the 2010s. We're going to do that next week, so tune in for those. Tune in for all of our TV content. Watch a ton of TV in quarantine, so you're going to love that. Stay safe out there. I'll talk to you on Monday.